Not a zookeeper, but I hear the lions a lot more from my house now. Weirdly reassuring to wake up to and realize the world is still going on.
Finally a thread I can answer. Not a whole lot of change, but animals definitely missing out some enrichment of seeing guests, especially the otters, that follow the kids in the glass underwater. Takin, maned wolves, bison, gibbons, bopies, lions, etc. all are about the same. Some of our animals that are skittish have been standing closer to the fence, where guests usually are, zebras, gazelle, which is nice. It's kinda this weird balance of being both more and less stressed. On the one side, I don't have to worry about keeper talks or BTS tours and I have more time to get everything done and spend more time with animals. On the other side we are skeleton crewed and there's less of us to care for the whole zoo, so I'm working a lot more in areas I don't usually cover as often. There's one kangaroo that still tries to box me, while the emu is shifting. The one peacock still really doesn't like taking his medications, of course. I have noticed that the crows in the city are behaving a bit differently as well, and are being a lot braver lol. My girlfriend is a zookeeper and animal behaviorist. She says their animals are becoming stressed. One of their African grey bads has been plucking his own feathers. She also mentioned that, because they can't touch many of the animals due to the virus potentially spreading to another zookeeper, many of the animals are looking and acting depressive, not eating well, etc. Due to temporary staff cuts, they no longer have the people to regularly walk the wombats. Some of the wombats are holding the keepers personally responsible. Imagine having a 20-kilogram chunk of muscle with big rodent teeth mad at you. The majority of our display birds could care less. However, our birds that do flights outside or routinely meet guests and do more interactive behaviors with the public have definitely noticed, and they are not cool with there being no guests around. Of course I can only guess, and while this is a bit anthropomorphic, I don't think they understand the change and seem somewhat hesitant to enter a new environment to them as we try to maintain their behavioral skills. One of the macaws, who is also excited to fly, is now always looking around. Pretty sure she expects 450 to 100 people to be watching her. Most of our animals are happy as long as we can keep their routines, feeding times, etc. For some they need a little extra. We do public encounters with our koalas, wombats, and snakes among others, so we spend an hour or so a day cuddling and handling these animals to keep them happy. A few of our koalas really fret if they don't get their cuddles. Otherwise we just try to continue to spend time with animals that are expecting human interaction, and of course we can take things for walks around the place, like I'm sure you've seen at other zoos. Our wombats love a run and sniff, dingoes as well. Horse trainer / barn manager here. My farm has 46 horses, about half are privately owned and boarded with us. Like most farms across the country, we are completely shut down to all but essential staff. The horses are mostly pretty happy to eat, hang out, and do horse things. We keep our horses turned out 24/7, which helps them remain healthy, happy, moving, and socializing. They are starting to lose muscling at this point, with being worked / ridden. Months or years of conditioning just disappearing by the day, but it will come back once they are all in work again. But I can tell that they are missing human interaction. My personal riding horse was giving me the cold shoulder yesterday, probably because of the lack of attention. I have been trying to give the boarded horses extra attention. I'm sure their owners are missing them terribly right now. They all seem to lean in a little more when I brush them these days. I'm an aquarium keeper, and I've certainly noticed a change. Fish are not as stressed as they used to be, as there are no longer children stomping around and banging on glass screaming Nemo, Nemo, it's Nemo at every clone fish. We brought some of our younger penguins down to let them watch the fish, and they were intrigued but confused as to why they couldn't catch them through the glass. Our octopus has become much more friendly as well, and instead of hiding all day from people, enjoys playing with small baby toys or solving food puzzles. It's been nice. I wish there were guidelines people had to sign to behave at zoos before entering, but at the same time, they are the lifeline we so desperately need to keep functioning. Large public aquarium. It's been only a little different for them. A few of the more timid animals are out and about a little more frequently than usual, or changing their active hours. The giant Pacific octopus, for example. I expected to see more change in the touch tank areas. Horseshoe crabs don't notice or care, which is expected, but the white-spotted bamboo sharks are also not really changing their behavior really either, which is good to see. We have cleaner shrimp that have to have more regular food because they're not grooming people anymore, but other than that, it's just another shrimp day. There's a bit of a balance of different behaviors that is kinda interesting. With no visitors, there is more time for enrichment, to get more creative with said enrichment, trialing new things, and exposure to enrichment that has to be supervised, which the animals are loving. Then there are certain animals that do seem to miss having public around. Our younger, 5 years old, African penguins are really seeming to miss being able to swim at the glass and interact with people. Higher intelligent animals, we have had to come up with new interactions. Lots of new training going on because they are missing the variety and variability of interactions with the public. The snakes don't give a frick though. Well, I'm currently stuck at home for the time being, but I've been in touch with some coworkers. Ultimately, the changes in behavior vary depending on how conscious each animal was of the guests to begin with, so for many there isn't too much change. Most of our exhibits are open during the winter when no one regularly visits, so a lot of them are used to periods where guests don't arrive, just not at this time of year. I'm sure our orangutans and some of the other apes have noticed, because they love to people watch and interact with the guests, but they are used to slow periods already. As for who is affected the most, I would say the geese around the zoo are probably the most upset by the change, since there aren't any scraps around to steal. That said, while our animals are still doing well, the biggest thing to worry about right now is funding. For many zoos, this time of year is critical for making money that will go to feed and supply our animals with the care they need for the year to come. With these closings, many zoos are likely to be struggling, especially if this continues. Meanwhile, many zoos are trying to find ways to interact and inform guests even still during this crisis. I recommend everyone take the time to check out their local zoo to see what streams or activities are being made available, and please make sure to donate if you can. A donation at a time like this can really help our animals. For a lot of our animals, having the ability to interact with guests is actually extremely important. Even for primates to be able to play with kids through the glass, they are missing out on a lot of enrichment. Guests keep a lot of the monkeys entertained. I watch our guests all day long show our marmosets and capuchin selfie cameras, and they love to see their reflection. Guests will also show videos on their phones to animals, and the monkeys totally enjoy it. We have a rescue cockatoo named Ro who sings "Row row row your boat" to guests. When little kids dance and sing it to her, she gets really excited and feeds off their energy. So do our other cockatoos on exhibit. But now without guests to show off for, every now and then, when it's quiet, we'll hear her start "row row row," and then she stop and huffs a bit and gets really quiet and sad because she has no one to sing to. Some of our animals really miss having kids to show off for. You also have to remember that animals in zoos for the most part have grown up totally accustomed to being around people 24/7. They are not wild animals at all really. They've grown up in a very different social dynamic. Quite a few animals get noticeably depressed in the winter months every year when we have few guests, and then perk up in the spring when we get busy. I'm a full-time zookeeper, and it's been difficult since we had to lay off all our seasonal/part-time help. More work for those of us still there, but the animals are all still getting top-notch care. We've been able to take them out to new places they don't get to when guests are around. Like taking our porcupine to the manatee building and walking a cheetah past the rhinos. I think it's fun for them, but I haven't seen any animals acting differently. Penguin tour groups are happening. Chicago, Street, Louis, Detroit, Tampa. Are penguins particularly curious animals, or are they chosen to roam because they are somewhat easy to wrangle on land? I'm on day 25 of working at a closed zoo. I work with great apes, and their behavior has changed a bit. They are generally very interactive with the public, so they are seeking even more attention than usual from us. Some of them were suspicious at first of the overwhelming silence outside now. They were climbing up high and scanning the area looking for everyone. Edit: I forgot to mention the wild animals. We are in a much larger park, and wild animals wander in all the time, but always scatter when the crowds roll in. Now, there's bucks just walking around, raccoons and foxes out in the middle of the day, and the squirrels. My god, the squirrels. I'm part of a large cat rescue looking after mostly ex-circus lions, tigers and panthers that were abused and made to perform for years. We've noticed that when there are visitors about, the same environment it created when they were in the circus, lots of people and noise, pictures being taken of them, loud kids etc. And because of this, the cats are better behaved, because they were treated roughly. They know, or knew, that bad behavior in front of large crowds used to mean they would get beaten or starved later on as punishment. It's small change and you certainly wouldn't know unless you spent a lot of time around them, but it's certainly interesting. They also only eat Carol's husband away from prying eyes. Most of our animals are more relaxed than they are with big crowds, or are acting mostly like they usually do. We have 2 bears that like to people watch, so they are definitely missing that source of entertainment, but are otherwise pretty normal. The biggest difference is that our pair of bald eagles mated for the first time in the decade that they've been housed together. We don't intentionally breed our animals, so there isn't a good nesting spot in their enclosure, but they just scraped out a divot and laid 2 eggs in it. However, neither are incubating the eggs, and we don't have breeding permits for them, so we can't keep the eggs. Very unpopular with our visitors. The geese that nest on the property are also getting extra territorial and threatening us keepers a lot more. Aggregating some of the zoo webcams mentioned in this thread. Feel free to add more please. I'm an animal keeper at a museum and there's pretty much zero change in behavior other than our farmyard animals seeming a little more lonesome from lack of attention. We've been spending more time with them and even eating lunch out there around them. Other than that, nobody else cares, haha. My favorite days at the zoo have been during the week when no one is there, when it is like 65 degrees and sunny. The animals are active as can be, and you can spend as much time as you want on all the exhibits. I have taken my kids out of school a couple of times, just to go to the zoo when no one is there. I can imagine right now is a great time to work at an aquarium, zoo, pet store or any other place where you care for animals. Depends on the animal. Some really like guest interaction like the gibbons and birds. Others are enjoying the quiet like hoofstock. Others like the elephants don't seem to notice. We have a new baby rhino, so it's been nice not having lots of noise getting her used to new spaces and making sure mom is comfortable with her calf in new space without loud sounds. 19 animals died because the tourists usually feed some of them, but before you go, well, that's your fault that they don't get their daily meals. Well, we're only 10 people at the zoo, so we can't feed them all the time and new animals can't be transported to the new zoo. But we can still let some people in like in China. But since we still take care of them and give them medication, the animals still act pretty weird, and I have worked there for 4 to 5 years at least. But what I think it's weird, that usually the monkeys are the most of them who dies. Please answer, I need an public opinion on it. Sorry if it's too long, but I really need answers. For a lot of our animals, having the ability to interact with guests is actually extremely important. Even for primates to be able to play with kids through the glass, they are missing out on a lot of enrichment. Guests keep a lot of the monkeys entertained. I watch our guests all day long show our marmosets and capuchin selfie cameras and they love to see their reflection. Guests will also show videos on their phones to animals and the monkeys totally enjoy it. We have a rescue cockatoo named Ro who sings row 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 your boat to guests. When little kids dance and sing it to her, she gets really excited and feeds off their energy. So do our other cockatoos on exhibit. But now without guests to show off for, every now and then, when it's quiet, we'll hear her start row row row, and then she stop and huffs a bit and gets really quiet and sad because she has no one to sing to. Some of our animals really miss having kids to show off for. You also have to remember that animals in zoos for the most part have grown up totally accustomed to being around people 24/7. They are not wild animals at all really. They've grown up in a very different social dynamic. Quite a few animals get noticeably depressed in the winter months every year when we have few guests, and then perk up in the spring when we get busy. They have taken over the Minnesota Zoo. I have been trapped in a meat locker for the weeks. The government is hiding it, but they still don't know I'm here. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you've been washing your hands and staying safe. Please look in the subscription for a link to donate to zoos and conservation efforts.